Hello, everyone. I'm City of Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Hello, Mayor. As we have all seen on the news in recent weeks, there's a huge backup of cargo ships out at sea that are holding hundreds of thousands of truckloads full of goods that we all need. The backup is being caused by a shortage of truck drivers. Today we want to talk about that issue, plus the need to expand a portion of the I-15 from California to Nevada. I'm joined by the city's Executive Director of Infrastructure and Development, Mike Janssen, and also the CEO of Nevada's Trucking Association, Paul Enos. And I just want to welcome you both. Mike has been with us now. This is a 25th anniversary. He only looks 25. And Paul, of course, isn't 25, but I understand you're a third and a fifth generation Nevadan.
Correct. On my mom's side goes back to St. Thomas, and my dad's side, my grandmother was born in Reno in 1915. So,
Isn't that
born and raised in Elko. So I've got the whole state
we
covered.
Forgive you. We forgive you.
That's my boots, right?
No, it's wonderful, and we thank you. This is such a critical time for us, and Mike, I know you and I have discussed often and at length how COVID-19 has affected everything, but really today is about this I-15. And how about a little history? Do you happen to recall, well, maybe you're too young to recall, but when was the I-15 put in? In 1964, it was the LA highway, and that was 2 lanes. When was this put in?
Sure, Mayor. So what you're referring to is the old LA highway, which was US 91. And US 91 was in place up until the Sloan exit until about 1967. That's when I-15 was stretched to Sloan. And then from 67 to 74, the completion of I-15 through southern Nevada was completed by NDOT and a lot of partners to get it done. So really, you're right, since 74, I-15 has been complete through southern Nevada.
And it has handled us well. I think everybody knows that because of the excess traffic and everything, before we did the Spaghetti Bowl, where the 95 and the I-15 join, we were running how many 100,000s a day through there?
Yes, Mayor. Pre-COVID, the Spaghetti Bowl, where I-15 and 95 come together, was carrying, on average, on a typical day, 400,000 vehicles a day going through that Spaghetti Bowl, with a little over 200,000 on I-15 and about 180,000 on US 95.
So, I mean, that's what was there, and of course, it's improved tremendously. But for everyone, Paul, tell us about the Nevada Trucking Association. How long's it been there,
Sure.
and what's its purpose?
So next year we're going to celebrate 90 years. So we've been around since 1932. I'm only the 5th head of the Trucking Association in that time.
And you took office in 2006?
2006. So
Wonderful.
I'm at my 15th year right now. When I was 30 years old, and it's, I didn't have any gray before I took this job. But really, it's the trucking companies here in the Silver State and some of our national companies that partner together to try to pass legislation, regulations, and those things that are good for the industry.
But only in Nevada, or are you
so there's one of me.
I mean, nationally connected?
So there's one of me in every state, and just so happens this year I became the chair of the Trucking Association Executive Council. Wow. So I'm the chair of all my counterparts, our organization from around the country, and it's a service role. It's one where you're trying to make sure that we all have the information and the data that we need to make good decisions.
So how does this stockpile? I mean, I know that what we're looking at now as a critical time, obviously COVID was critical, closing us down and taking away our main industry of hospitality. And with doing that, what happened additionally with the stockpiling in California and economically, and how does it work? What happens to all that cargo that's sitting in California in the harbors that we're not able to get through?
Sure. So, I mean, what happens is it sits there, and you may have something that is for the holiday season or Halloween that may be on a ship that doesn't end up in the store shelves and get sold. So, we had that a little bit at Easter. I know my wife noticed all of the things to, get your yard ready for spring, that there was not the kind of selection that we're used to, because a lot of that freight, and at the time it was, hey, we've got 50 ships sitting in San Pedro Bay. Today we're hearing 70 ships in San Pedro Bay, which is where the port of LA and Long Beach are, ports of LA and Long Beach. Right. So those two ports accounts for about 50% of all the freight that we get from China. So
you've got China, Korea, Taiwan, Japan,
Vietnam.
All of that, the entire Far East, all that material sitting there. It's not like at the East Coast, where I know you lived for a while and where I grew up. The amount of material that's sitting there, how was that affected by the employment? I mean, what's happened to that, and how are we going to be in a position? Obviously, there's rail, and before it gets to rail, it has to be unloaded. Then it directs, how does that decision get made, whether it's trucking?
So whether it's trucked or rail depends on a couple of factors. And really, it's not just truck or rail, it's truck, rail, pipeline, plane. I mean, there's, ship. So, I mean, there's a multitude of factors that you're going to consider. Number one, where's the freight coming from? What does it weigh, and how far does it have to go? Typically, rail only makes sense to move commodities that are heavy, non-time sensitive, and that are going long distances. So when you're looking at a lot of the freight that we're getting from Asia, it's not necessarily heavy. It's not necessarily time sensitive. Couldn't be time sensitive if it's sitting on a ship for that long. And, depending on where it's going across the country, you're going to make that determination. Should it go on truck or should it go on a train? Typically, you want to have anywhere from 750 to 1,000 miles at least before you put that on a truck. So if it's shorter than that, it should go on a truck.
So I would imagine who's making that was predetermined before it's shipped as to whether it's going to be trucked or whether it's going to be put on rail.
And it's also where you're finding capacity. So capacity is a big deal for our industry. What does capacity mean? How much space is in that rail car? How much space is on that container ship? How much space is on that truck? And right now, the trucking industry, our capacity is really tight. We don't have the space to be able to move all the goods that we need to move for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have a driver shortage. We're about 60,000 drivers short today.
Nationally or just
nationally? That's a national number, and it's one that.
What's that due to, if you wouldn't mind my asking? Is it due to the fact that the federal government has been somewhat shut down as far as, or paying?
So there were some issues with the pipeline of new drivers coming in during COVID, when you had the DMV shut down and not giving people the ability to go and get their commercial learner's permit. Now, I have to give the DMV credit. They had a lot of other things for our industry still open. Right. During COVID, we were still able to get a lot of stuff done electronically, but in terms of getting new drivers, getting them through the truck driving schools, getting them tested, getting them on the road, those pipelines were shut down. Nevada, we actually got it open before a lot of other places, so that's good. But that has absolutely hampered the ability to bring new people in. But we also have, and this is a good thing, Mayor, we have 75,000 people who were driving trucks 18 months ago who aren't driving today because we have a drug and alcohol clearinghouse. And those people have tested positive. And when you test positive, you're out of the industry until you complete a return to duty process, which only about 10,000 or so folks across the country have completed.
Now, is that something new?
That was January 6, 2020, when that came into effect. And it's really been good, because a lot of times if somebody would turn up positive on a drug test, they could just go and they could get a job down the street. That doesn't happen today. So from a safety perspective, that's a good thing, but it has exacerbated the driver shortage.
Okay, now moving from the harbors into California. Mike, take us through that, because the thing that I see all the time is people, we have about 30% of our tourist population coming in, and not that they aren't coming in from other surrounding states, but from the Southern California area. And on a good day, it was 3.5, 4 hours from LA. And I've heard from friends returning, it's 8, 9 hours. Could you explain a little bit about the roadway and what happens?
Sure, Mayor. So as you know from driving the corridor, there's been a lot of investment the closer you get to the coast. Coming from the port, significant investment up to about the Cajon Pass area. But then as you get up to the top of the Cajon Pass and you start working your way really through San Bernardino County, we're talking about the stretch of I-15 that mostly falls within San Bernardino County. That's the stretch that's largely 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. Caltrans, to their credit, has invested in truck climbing lanes. As of today, about 1/3 of the route through the whole San Bernardino stretch has truck climbing lanes. So they really help a lot to add some capacity. But at the end of the day, it's still just 4 general purpose lanes where you have 6 lanes or more on each other end. On the Nevada side, and as you get closer down the Cajon Pass, there's way more than the 6 to 8 lanes. And so that stretch in the middle is the constrained stretch. And it's really a stretch of highway that has made a lot of bad lists. It's made the list it's in the top 50 for the most fatalities per mile. It's in the top 25 for the most fatalities per 100 crashes. That's an indicative number, 100 per 100 crashes, where it's usually speed related, where there's a speed differential where someone may be trying to get around the slow moving vehicle and they're going too fast, can't slow down and crash. And so it's made the list on areas where you would think that alone should help the powers that be to look at doing more investment. It's also been on the list for the most fatalities during dark conditions. There's no lighting mostly the whole way through San Bernardino.
That's true.
So between crashes at night, crashes during high-speed accidents, just a whole host of things, operationally, that stretch of I-15 really needs to see some investment. And I think that's where we're looking to work with our partners at NDOT, at Caltrans, to find out how can we move that next project forward to see some improvement to that vitally important stretch.
Well, and of course in California, they're very anxious to move their own people and business and economically up and down through California. At a point, and knowing, because we drive it a lot, things really get congested at the Barstow area. And we have invested up to state line, have we not?
Yeah.
And how far on the I-15, how many lanes is that moving east from Las Vegas?
There's at least 6 lanes going to the border, and they have to transition from 6 to 4 as you're getting through Prim. But Nevada has invested heavily on our stretch to do continuous upgrades to maintain the quality of it, to add technology, upgraded lighting, upgraded traffic data. You'll see all the message boards that are out to inform motorists what the travel time is from Las Vegas to get to Prim. And as we know, on a typical day, on a typical Monday to Thursday, to go from Las Vegas to the Prim border, it's about a 30 to 35 minute drive.
Wow.
But on weekends, it can be 80, 90 minutes. And so that's some of the challenges, is during peak periods, the stretch from Las Vegas all the way to that border, extremely, extremely challenging. And that continues all the way into California for many miles, where truckers, many truckers, Paul would know best some of the delays they see, but it makes the whole cost of the trip that much more costly, because there's so many more hours that you're taking to get a trip that normally be 3.5, 4 hours. Now you're into 7.5 hours.
Is the loss economically felt all the way across the country as the I-15 connects in the south to the 10 and more centrally to the I-40, and then sort of going up more to the north on the I-70? Where is that economic loss really felt? Is that in California? Is that Nevada? Or is that everywhere?
It's completely regionally, Mayor, because at the end of the day, the cost for delivering those materials from the ports coming through California into Las Vegas and up to Salt Lake City or towards Denver or to any other regional areas that are getting those deliveries, at the end of the day, the cost is about time and fuel. And so every hour that a truck driver has to add to the trip to go from point A to B increases the cost of that trip. The reduction in gas mileage, because they're slowing down, they're constantly having to raise their speed limit up and down. The best way for a trucker, I think, and Paul would tell you, is when they can maintain a consistent speed going up and down the hills, it's the most efficient way for them. But on this stretch, they're constantly having to slow down, start up, slow down. And that's where the cost really gets passed on to the consumer. So at the end of the day, Mayor, the consumer, all the consumers in this Southwest region that depend on goods coming from the LA Long Beach ports, they're paying the price because that stretch of I-15 just doesn't have the same capacity that some of the other stretches do.
Well, knowing the time, I mean, here we are, in my opinion, we are in a crisis situation in this particular economic area and industry right now. How fast can we move something? I know in Nevada, you've just said, our lanes are pretty, we don't have a truck lane, which we probably, all of us would love to see. Does that come down through NDOT? Where would that come through? But how do we persuade California and Caltrans, which I understand is the counterpart to NDOT, to put money into? It certainly has to be an economic
I don't know that
lightning.
we can convince California to do that. I think we need to do a better job nationally of identifying what those corridors are that have a regional or a national significance. Arizona, I-15, that is even less important to them than I-15 is in California, and that's their most expensive stretch of road. You know, those few miles through Arizona, the gorge, I mean, those are the most expensive to maintain.
Well, you know, I know there's a pot of money, it's called $3 trillion, that's right now sitting in Washington trying to get everybody to work together. This is absolutely infrastructure.
100%.
If we don't get this message into Secretary Buttigieg and other people on the federal government right now, that's going to be there in another 6 months and 8 months, and we are just going to see this start to continue to slide. So what can we do that's not going to take 10 years to get the study you're talking about?
Well, I don't know that it's a study. I mean, I would hope that, and they've kind of done this with a freight plan or a freight provision. You can get freight grants for different states. Unfortunately, every state has to apply for them. Once again, California, their most important road is not Nevada's most important road. Their most important road is I-5.
Right.
You know, our artery, especially for Southern Nevada, is I-15. That's where we get not just people, but we have a tremendous amount of goods and freight that come in on I-15. For us, that is, for the state of Nevada, that is our artery.
But isn't this now the time, and I know you have often said to me you have to have an environmental study.
Yep.
Those take a couple of years. Who do we appeal to, being Nevada and Southern Nevada or whomever? How do we turn that burner up in California? Because they're sitting with the cargo. We're not sitting with it. We want that to come in. Of course, the bottom line is that will free up the roadways for tourism as well. But right now, everybody in this country is waiting for goods that's sitting there from the Far East. We can't wait 3 years. So what do we do?
Mayor, I wish I had an easy answer, and I don't know that there is an easy answer to this problem. I think we need to have a greater focus on real infrastructure, and I look at the bill the Senate passed that is 38% more funding for roads and bridges as a good start. That is a good start. We also need to start looking at those corridors where you have a regional or a national significance, where a state like California or Arizona, it may not be on their priority list, but if we have a greater share of federal dollars going to those projects, in those states that aren't necessarily going to benefit the Golden State or the Grand Canyon State,
Right.
but they definitely are Utah and Nevada. Let's have a greater share of federal dollars go to those kind of projects.
So what are we talk? I mean, I just am one. I get tired of all these binders. We have all these meetings, and nothing happens. We have these people waiting to get one way or another. 9 hours in a ride that should take 4.
Mayor, I see three prongs of action that we can work collectively with our partners on. The first one is there has been established for a number of years now what's known as the I-15 Mobility Alliance. The I-15 Mobility Alliance is actually a partnership between Caltrans, Nevada, and UDOT, the 3 primary DOTs. Arizona is also a part, but it's such a small portion that they have that it's focused mostly on those 3 major DOTs. And what the I-15 Mobility Alliance does is they try to identify short, medium, and long-term improvements to that stretch of I-15 in the respective states for various reasons, whether it's safety, congestion, a whole host of reasons. And so environmental as well. That last update was done in 2017, and earlier today I spoke with the team that's going to be doing the update, and they are all back together again, sitting down, working on, okay, let's do the Mobility Alliance update. Some of the projects that this alliance brought forward in past years is some of those truck lanes, some of those truck climbing lanes on certain stretches that really could use them. It came out of this I-15 Mobility Alliance. So step 1 is to be a part of that I-15 Mobility Alliance to try to shake out some additional improvements on this stretch in particular that we know is challenging. Option 2, the next step, is both Caltrans and NDOT have relatively new directors. They both are in about 2 years. Caltrans director took office in that role about 2 years to the day almost. And so I think it would be of benefit for our major Southern Nevada partners, and by that I mean the LVCVA, the NRA, and then some of the municipalities, to sit down and have just a roundtable discussion with Caltrans and NDOT to talk about just the criticalness of that stretch of I-15 and see how might some of these shorter term improvements, ones that aren't as time sensitive with environmental studies, but maybe there's a way to do some short-term improvements to get some relief. But that roundtable will be a great way to start that conversation. And then the third one is the longer-term one, Mayor, that points to the environmental study that you talked about. I believe the first step in every major roadway project is to do a feasibility study. We do it on every project we do. And what it comes down to is a question of what is the feasibility of doing a project between Primm and Barstow. And I see 2 options. I see a traditional roadway widening project to go from 2 lanes in each direction to 3, the feasibility of doing that, which will identify costs
I'd
and
like
impacts.
4. Could we do 4
We
with
can,
one
we can
of
have
them
4
for trucking?
We could look at an option for a
3
trucking lane for
and
sure.
1 for trucks.
And then the other option, Mayor, is an avenue that, reading a little bit on the Caltrans new director, some of his priorities he talked about is wanting to take advantage of something that's known as managed lanes. Managed lanes is where Caltrans throughout the state of California has implemented a variety of managed lanes projects, and you'll see them on like the California 91, where they have what's called an HOT express lane. They've done the equivalent of toll lanes that you're familiar with from back east. Yes. California's done a lot of them throughout the state. And so one option might be that traditional widening of the corridor, but that puts a heavy burden on where those dollars are going to come from to pay for that. And option 2 would be to look at an opportunity for managed lanes, what's known as a public-private partnership. And that takes some of the burden off of Caltrans because a private investor would be willing to invest in adding those lanes if they were able to get a rate of return.
Mike, I'll tell you what, that scares the hell out of me because I have seen those go wrong all over the country, including 91 when it was originally built. I mean, that road was a disaster. I mean,
Is that a toll road?
That was
then?
toll road.
And that's where the private sector investor gets a piece back.
That's right.
Is that controllable?
Well,
if it's done right, there's been some states that have done it.
I don't know who's done it right yet. That's, I look at the Chicago Skyway, I look at the Indiana toll road that went bankrupt. I mean, I think a lot of those private-public partnerships are really a way for politicians to get out of raising the gas tax. And when I look at what makes the most sense in terms of paying for our infrastructure, it's raising our fuel tax. We have not had a fuel tax increase in this country since 1993. We have not had one in the state of Nevada. Now, hey, we've done something down here in southern Nevada with indexing. We've done it in northern Nevada.
Yes, very successful.
And it has been very successful. You know, raising money that way has been successful. I wish that's something the state would take a gander at. I wish that's something the feds would take a look at. But I mean, I look at toll roads. I look at VMT. I look at all of these other machinations that folks have out there to pay for our roads. They don't work as well as the fuel tax. For every dollar we collect in fuel tax, we get 97 cents back. That is a great deal when you consider.
And we've done great things with that
exactly.
fuel tax.
And I mean, I look at what we've done with indexing. I was not a fan of indexing because I thought we let politicians off the hook from having to raise taxes.
Don't look at me. I'm just a resident here.
However, I will say I think it has been successful in growing that money. When you have people that aren't going to take action, have it go up automatically, and really it's not something a whole lot of us notice.
Right.
We are noticing fuel prices go up today pretty tremendously,
And we
although
can't
they
figure out why.
seem a lot easier here than up in the north where I'm at.
Our biggest problem, though, is we have a legislature that meets only every other year. And there are only 4 states in the entire country where the legislature meets every other year.
You're not going to get me an advocate for.
Okay, and no, all I'm saying is in order for us to handle the critical issue of lack of delivery on cargo across this country, it's the roads, it's lack of drivers, it's the funding. And my biggest thing is I'm seeing $3 trillion in the hands of the federal government now. And I learned a long time ago from this gentleman on my right that get in early, get yourself planned, and get in to make your appeal.
Because the time, Mayor, is you asked about environmental clearance. And so in any project in the 50 states, you have to do an environmental impact statement or an environmental assessment. In California, they add an additional layer known as CEQA. And so it's an additional level of environmental consideration that every project in California, for the most part, has to go through. So when you say to me, Mike, if we had a feasibility study done today on how to widen the road, whether it would be to widen it traditionally as just a third additional general purpose lane, or to widen it with some machination of a HOV toll lane, regardless, the design to go from Prim to Barstow, if that design was done today, and you then were wanting to get it approved environmentally, you're looking at no less than 2 years to as much as 4. And that's why timing is the most important thing to get a project.
And that's without lawsuits.
That's without lawsuits that could slow things down. So
Can that be done privately?
you still cannot avoid the environmental clearance. So a privately designed project might be able to shorten the time frame of completing the design, but it doesn't do anything on the environmental clearance. The environmental clearance is just what takes the longest. It's particularly on a project that would be over 100 miles in length. And so from my perspective, getting a project to look at just design funds, a small allocation, wouldn't be a huge number, to look at the feasibility of doing a widening on that stretch, to find out, get it in front of all the right people, that's really the first step.
And California, though, why should they care except now they're in a crunch because the harbors are packed?
Originally, the highway system, the interstate system, was built as part of the national defense. And when you have one part of that system break down, you're going to see those ramifications throughout the entire country. We're seeing that today. And so I think we need to take, instead of a regional or a state perspective, we need to have kind of that broad-minded, what does this do to the national perspective? I mean, people go, what does a road in Elko mean to me? Well, that road in Elko, if that's not working, I may not be able to get my milk or gas or beef or whatever is
Right.
happening out there. So we need to have the whole system work, because when it doesn't, we do see those breakdowns, and those are breakdowns that we've seen considerably more of through the last
Okay, so
18
I'm
months.
a person of action. What can we start to do now? We can take care of Nevada. I'm not sure too many other states care too much about Nevada because they want to dump all their poisonous everything here, and they don't care that the tourists can't get here for a wonderful time in their meetings and everything else. This really is doubly critical now because people can't get in and back to California for whatever reason, being it trucking, everything that they're waiting for back east. And so what is the shortest timeline for anything? And are we not, between the two states or 3 or 4 states, in line to get something from that $3 trillion stockpile of funding for infrastructure improvement?
One of the things, Mayor, that the federal government has identified on that infrastructure bill is they're going to be considering all project proposals based on merit. And so there's going to be an opportunity to, from a merit standpoint, show the federal team, the federal highway team, why this stretch is so important. I think it goes back to what Paul was saying in terms of there needs to be the additional educating why this stretch is so important, not just for Nevada, but for the whole supply chain, and how all the consumers, particularly on the whole Southwest and Intermountain area, are paying the additional cost because that stretch doesn't have reliable congestion. The average driver will tell you, if I have reliable congestion where I know every day during that little stretch I'm going to have a slowdown, they're okay with it. They can live with it. But on this stretch, the congestion pops up because there'll be an incident. So it's very unreliable on how long your travel time is going to be. So at the end of the day, there's an opportunity in that federal transportation bill to try to convince the Federal Highway Administration that there is a lot of merit to doing some investment in the stretch of I-15. And it starts with having a good discussion with Caltrans and NDOT to see how do we shake out some dollars to do a feasibility study to look at widening that stretch.
Well,
Safety,
I know I had
environmental congestion.
Rudy Montalban used to be the head of NDOT and a good friend of Mr. Cervantes, our city manager, and he had started those conversations. Now, as life moves on and people transition into something, do we go back to square one, start all over again?
I think we pick up right where Rudy left off, and I think we certainly respect that leadership changes always happen in all
Yes, they do.
organizations. And as an example, Mayor, the new Caltrans director, I was reading a little bit on the Caltrans organization. He has 50,000 miles of roadway that he's responsible for. And of course, for us, we're talking about this
This little
114-mile
tiny
stretch.
piece, right.
But I think picking up where Rudy left off and having that conversation of how can we move the needle towards seeing some relief on that stretch. And there's a lot of different ways you can use technology. There may be some isolated stretches where you get that first phase safety improvement. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but we definitely want to sit down with that group and see what, from their perspective, since it's their road, they control that right away, what might be the best way to move that needle forward.
And it may be a place for Nevada and Utah to invest some of our dollars in, even though it's not in the state of Nevada.
Right.
That may be a place where we should say, yeah, maybe we need to invest. But once again, that's why we have a federal program, and that's what a federal program is designed to do. So if it means a greater share of federal dollars for those projects.
You know, with technology today and everybody having a voice and everybody having an opinion, today is the day when if it doesn't move out of those harbors, there's going to be screaming and yelling. So in order to preclude that from happening and a war taking place over where are my tires, where are those little tiny chips that we're now waiting for the cars and everything else, isn't it best to get together and go to the top of the iceberg and get a hold of Secretary Buttigieg and say, this is where it is. This is critical. Do you realize the whole country will be down on this? Not just Nevada and Utah, Arizona, and other parts, but all of that. So how do you get there? How do you get to the head of transportation, and the administrative, you're expert in this.
Mayor, we have a terrific federal delegation, and Congresswoman Titus leads many of the conversations on the transportation and infrastructure level. And so I would say for us to take it to the next level, we would reach out to Congresswoman Titus and say, from her perspective, she knows the infrastructure program so well.
She sits on T&I.
She sits on all the major
Transportation
committees,
infrastructure.
and we would ask her how do we take this conversation to get it to that next level for action, and like you said, Mayor, so that it's not just.
And
just
she has been doing it. I mean, she has been. I know.
Well, we met there with when Secretary Anthony Fox,
Correct.
Out of Charlotte, had been the Secretary of Transportation. He came here, and his comment to me was, when I waited till the end of the meeting, move freight. Move freight. Don't talk about your individual needs. Talk about moving
Correct.
freight. And here we are. So I know you'll be there because you're always right there all the time for us. And Paul, it's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me,
appreciate it.
Mayor.
But I can count on you for Nevada to help in this push and get something.
Happy to help. I know that's something that our folks are looking at. Anytime we can reduce the amount of time that our truck drivers are sitting and waiting in traffic, and I will tell you, a lot of them try to avoid I-15 on a Sunday.
I don't blame them, especially if they're going west.
Exactly.
That is a horrible experience. So not only is it vital for our goods to make it into Nevada, I believe tourists from California would benefit so much from the widening of the I-15. And when we come back, I'm going to be sitting down with Andrew Simon from the Fremont Street Experience to see what we're doing with the crowds as they're looking forward to coming here for the holidays and having a grand time since the start of this pandemic that has been so impactful. So please stay by.
Kind of want this whole thing to be over, and to do that, people need to get vaccinated, just plain and simple.
I do have children, and I have grandchildren, and I want to set that example.
I was not simply going to be a pastor that was only aware. I was going to be a pastor that was going to combine awareness with responsibility.
The primary reason for me is my mother lives with me. My mother just turned 78 years old, and I consider it my responsibility to keep her safe.
Welcome back, everyone. Downtown Las Vegas continues to bring in huge crowds from all over the world. Fremont Street Experience is the place for tourists and locals to hang out, catch a free concert, and enjoy some fun. With the holidays approaching, they have a long list of events headed our way, and I'm joined by their president and CEO, Andrew Simon, to talk about all that they have going on. And so welcome, Andrew. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. I mean, you and Oscar have been an inspiration to me ever since I moved to Las Vegas. You guys do so much, so thank you for having me.
Well, this is wonderful. We've been trying for a while, but you know, all good things, you have to wait for the best. So one of the questions I want everybody to know about you is a little bit about your background, because we all know that UNLV has an outstanding hotel industry program, as does Michigan, but there's a school in Ithaca, New York, Cornell University, and I understand you're an alumnus. So tell us a little bit about how you connect to Las Vegas, what happened after Cornell, and who you are.
Sure. You know, I came out here in 1992, but before that, I was at Cornell University back in Ithaca, New York. I am a New Yorker. And at the time, there was Cornell's Hotel School and UNLV. Those were really the two. And at the time, there was this hotel being built called the Mirage, and they were building it, and the recruiting was going on strong. And Artie Nathan, who was the head of HR at the time, and Steve Wynn were looking to bring people with college backgrounds into the industry.
Right.
And so they came and recruited at Cornell. And my family, both my mom and dad, loved to gamble and loved to come out here. So I came out here really never having been out to Nevada all that much. And came out here, got recruited.
From college, right from college?
Right from college, at 21 years old, they recruited for this management program at the Mirage that they had just started. It was called the MAP program. And they were recruiting us, and it really was just Cornell and UNLV students. And we got to go through all the different parts of the hotel. We got to do the front desk, we got to do housekeeping, we got to do custodial. But in my case, I ended up interested in the casino side. I really was interested. It turned out it paid a little bit more, which at the time, you know, I didn't grow up with much. So getting paid a little more at 21 was something I was very interested in. I dealt blackjack, baccarat, roulette. And worked from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. on that swing shift at the Mirage.
Oh my gosh.
And then we moved over to Treasure Island when it opened, because they were building Treasure Island at the time as well. So all of us got to do about 6 months in casino ops or wherever it was you chose to be in the property. And then ultimately I became a floor supervisor. And then they went to try to legalize gambling in Florida at the time. There was a big thing called Proposition 8.
Yes.
And all the properties came together, and it was really the first time you had the Boyd Group and Harrah's and Caesars and Mirage at the time coming together for one common cause, which was to legalize gambling in Florida. And what they did was brought myself and Cindy Schwarzkopf, who was General Norman's daughter at the time, and we looked like two innocent kids that could go out there, and we would do TV and newspaper and radio interviews, go to senior homes, wherever, trying to rally support. And so for 4 to 6 months, I was in Florida trying to legalize gambling. And then it ended. The proposition didn't pass.
Of course.
Came back to
Thank heaven.
Vegas. They put me back on the casino floor. And from that point, I kind of got a taste of what it was like to not stand there on the casino floor. I saw public relations and the ability to do more. And so from there, I left Las Vegas for a short period of time to go to business school, to try to change things up, because I
And
really...
that was for everybody, it was UCLA, it wasn't just business school, it was an exceptional business program, and that brought you back here and back to win again, or no?
No, the next time, you know, after business school, I kind of changed up my career, and that's part of what happened throughout my business career. Is I took a lot of turns to try different things, and so went from casino gaming to business school. Then I worked for Deloitte & Touche and did consulting and worked for a lot of different companies trying to solve their business issues and business problems. From there, went to a video-on-demand company, and from there, I came back to Las Vegas. Cox Communications had a group called Hospitality Network that did the video-on-demand for all the casino hotels from everybody in town, 100,000 hotel rooms. Back in the day of the LodgeNet and On Command, when you would buy movies and do internet in the room.
The good old days.
They brought me back to do that. And then ultimately, I ran sales and marketing for all of Cox Communications in town.
For how many years was that?
I did that total 4 years for Cox. And then one day, I got a call from Mark Cuban. And Mark kind of said, "Hey, Andrew, you want to meet for
And
lunch?"
Mark was from where?
Mark is from Dallas, Texas, but originally from Pittsburgh, New York.
But what
from
was he
Pittsburgh.
representing?
Well, Mark has the Dallas Mavericks, but he also had a TV network called HDNet at the time, which was the first high-definition television network out there. And he called me up one day and said, "Do you want to meet for lunch?" And I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a fraternity brother messing with me a little bit. But we met out here for about 6-7 hours one day for lunch, just chatting and talking. And for years, we kind of would just be texting and talking about stuff. But at the time, he was starting a new mixed martial arts promotion, had this new HD TV network.
Boy, what a program.
I know.
Was he influential in your coming to FSC then?
Well, no. So I ended up working for Mark for 12 or 13 years after Cox
my
Communications. We built the TV network called HDNet, and then it became Access TV. And for 12 or 13 years, I put on 1,000 mixed martial arts events, pro wrestling events. We did college football, college basketball, bicycle races.
A potpourri of everything.
A little of everything.
And so how did you get into FSC? That's the Fremont Street Experience.
So We sold the
that
TV
further?
network.
Okay.
So Mark sold the TV network right before the pandemic. His timing is impeccable.
Perfect.
He sold the
Perfect.
TV network, and then I had to figure out, what am I going to do next? Here we go again. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Didn't know what I was going to do. And then one day, one of my best friends in town, Dave, who has worked for the Mirage for now 30 plus years, calls me and
Wow.
says, on the front of the Review Journal, it says the FSE president is retiring and resigning. He goes, you'd be good at that. And I'm like, I don't know. I've never run a street. I mean, I've never run any of this. He goes, you should find out. And I texted some people and said, hey, what do you know about this? And next thing you know, was in interviews, and 3-4 weeks later, I had the job, Mayor. It was one of those.
You hit the ground running.
It
And
was
what an
crazy.
experience, I know, and that's represented by the Downtown Consortium of Hotels. You have a board to whom you report, so it's not like you're freewheeling out there. But I do want to go over, because I remember that this was Glitter Gulch, and the Fremont Street first hotel was built in 1906. And of course, in years past, it became the drive-through for cruising for all young people trying to pick other friends up and just have a great time. And as the strip began to grow and really take over, downtown just sort of began to close itself down. Not too many of our tourists were coming down. And then all of a sudden came the idea that maybe we should do something with Fremont Street and bring it into being an attraction too. And I know Don Snyder, former Mayor Jan Jones, was very much in favor of that. And then when my husband was mayor, there was a lot of crime and issues with which to deal, and he worked on that. So ultimately, I mean, I know we had John Jurdy as the architect designing what do you do with Fremont Street. He happened to be the architect who designed the World Market Center, which is really a magnificent structure. But then here came the canopy and everything, and it opened, as I recall, because we were here, in December of 1995. Tell us all about Fremont Street and what you do, and most importantly, how much does it cost and everything? And you have performers there, and what are some of the activities that go on? Because I have a list and I want to hear from them.
Oh yeah, I mean, that canopy really changed the whole dynamic downtown. In 1995, they built that canopy, and it's the world's largest single contiguous display. I know it's a lot of words, but it's the biggest display that goes 5 city blocks long. It's 90 feet high, 90 feet wide, 1,375 feet long. It's got a 600,000 watt sound system there.
Wow.
So when the music plays and the videos go up there, and we just did that big upgrade that we did with the cities, Generosity and the LVCVA and us all coming together with a $30 million plus upgrade. It is fantastic. You can see it during the day.
Viva Vision, as I recall, is that
That's
correct?
right. It is the Viva
Okay.
Vision. And we put on shows there, and right now we're investing heavily in more shows and more content. One of the first things I did when I came on board, we had 2 graphic artists working on it, and we also have outsourced companies that would build these shows that cost in excess of $250,000
Now,
a show.
do they run all day long or just in the dark at night?
They run at night starting at 6 p.m. on the hour till 2 a.m. And so those shows run at 6 p.m. and we have from the Killers to, you know, Steve Aoki to, you know, Shakira, a new show. And we try to put on really upbeat, great content up there, and we're always trying to develop. And right now, we're trying to develop 3 new shows up there. But on top of that, to your point, what we do is free. We are in the entertainment capital of the world, but nobody provides more free content, live entertainment, than Fremont Street Experience. We have 3 stages going every day with about 20 hours of live entertainment, from live music, live bands, and also DJs up there, plus the Viva Vision canopy. Plus you walk around and you just, everything's going on that street that's so interactive. There's so much happening.
Now,
and
one
it's free.
second though, I remember I took that Slotzilla.
Yes.
Could you explain what that is?
Sure. Sure.
There it is.
Yeah, we have a zip line as well over there that we brought into FSE, and it really is fantastic. You get to zoom down 5 city blocks long. I think it's at 50 to 60 miles per hour. You're flying through like Superman or Superwoman or sitting in a chair pose. You decide which one you want to do. But it is a fantastic ride that has added so much to the entertainment aspect over there.
And how is that free also? I think there has to be a cost.
That
as
is
you have
not free.
professionals.
That's charged, and we time it out to make sure the experience is great. So you can go to vegasexperience.com. You can take a look at tickets. You could book them online, and you book a specific time, 7 p.m., 7:28.
Oh,
that way you're
isn't
not
that great?
waiting there all night. You know, it's like a reservation system at a restaurant. We've done the same there to try to make the experience great.
Isn't that phenomenal? And then what's below? What is going on the street? I know the hotels for the longest time, everything, they wanted everybody in the casinos, and so there wasn't much going on from the hotels on the street itself. So which is closed to all traffic. Closed.
Yeah.
So what do we have going on in what I guess is called a pedestrian mall?
It is. It's known as Pedestrian Mall today. And again, a lot of the casino hotels have now built bars as well on the street too, so you don't have to go into the hotel and gamble. Of course, everybody would like you to go
Right.
out and go into the properties, but they've also made the experience great on the street. So you can listen to the live music. You can listen. We have music 24/7 going on the Viva Vision canopy. Those shows, the Viva Vision shows, are at the top of the hour, but it's always a party on the street. There's always music playing. There's always stuff going on the canopy, and then also those bands are playing. So now the hotels have developed their bars also along the street, so you can just grab a drink and enjoy and walk on the street and not have to go in and out and in and out. You have the ability just to spend your time on the street.
Now, are they open all day? Is everything open 24/7?
Well, no, the bars typically close at 2 a.m., potentially
Okay.
3 a.m. if there's a huge event. But, you know, we have to clean the street at the
Of
end of the night.
course.
So we sometimes shut the street down to clean it and sanitize it and
Okay.
do that overnight. It doesn't mean people aren't walking around, but we do have, the Zambonis cleaning it up and sanitizing it and doing that. But the bars typically are closed around 2 or 3 a.m. on the street, as we try to kind of clean the street up and get ready for another party the following
Well, I
day.
know you do an awful lot at FSC that's charitable and helping the community. Now, your Downtown Rocks is what? That's ongoing. What is Downtown Rocks?
Yeah, so Downtown Rocks is our premier concert series. Those we
Okay.
put on about 12 big concerts a year that are, again, free. I like to say we're the #1 free concert series in America. Nobody's putting on bigger and better concerts for free in the United States. That's clear. If you were here this past week,
And you don't pay coming into the experience. You just walk in through the side streets, or from Las Vegas Boulevard or from Main Street is the access, correct?
And or through a
and
casino.
3rd Street.
And casino hotels. You could just walk right from the Golden Nugget onto the street, from Circa right onto the street, and it's free. We are not charging a penny to see these concerts, and these are bands you would be paying $100, $200 to see, and you could stand right up against the stage and be right there, and you didn't pay a penny to see it. And the crowds have been enormous lately.
Well, I think the small businesses we have downtown have been so instrumental in getting us through this COVID shutdown and reopening, but the energy and the excitement and people wanting to be next to each other and talk to each other. And as it's outdoors, what's the story at this time with masks?
Yeah.
It is outdoors. Is the mask mandate because it's under a canopy? Where are we with that?
Yeah, we don't need masks on Fremont Street because it
Okay.
is outdoors.
Wonderful.
So
But once you're
able-
in a hotel or go into any of the stores, you have to put your mask on.
That's correct.
Okay. Now tell us a little bit about the, here's Halloween coming in a couple of weeks, and it's Nevada Day as well. So do we have anything special going on for Halloween? And don't disclose if you want to have it surprise, but then we have Thanksgiving, and then of course the holidays. So can you walk us through this exciting time? Everybody wants to come downtown.
Yeah, so Halloween comes up, and we don't even have to do much, and everybody comes dressed in costume. Tens of
Oh,
thousands of people. We've become the official place to kind of walk around outside.
We don't
and
have a
Halloween.
competition with a prize?
Well, not only that, the Circa is having a $10,000 costume, so I didn't want to compete with them on that.
No.
So Circa's giving away $10,000
Wow.
in a costume contest, so I recommend you check out their social media. I saw it last night as well, that they're starting to promote it, so they're giving away $10,000 for the costumes, and I think it has something to do with Vegas Vicky. You got to take a look at their, that's their piece, but we are going to be ready for Halloween and a big party down there. George Thorogood is coming on November 6th.
Okay.
And then Vince Neil is coming. We're doing something called Drinksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving.
Whoa.
And when you used to go home for the holidays and see your friends, you'd always see them the day before Thanksgiving because everybody was coming back home and you had family on Thanksgiving. The day before, you'd go out and drink with your friends.
Right.
We're having Drinksgiving.
Oh, I love that.
On
That's
Fremont
cute.
Street Experience, and that will be hosted by Vince Neil playing that night before Thanksgiving. So it should be a heck of a time over there for that. But we have so much planned coming up for New Year's. We have
anything over there. You know, I do remember the hotels would absolutely almost close down the showrooms from right before Thanksgiving up to New Year's because it was just dark here. And now it's just an active time. We have so many people driving in from Southern California, Utah, Arizona, and elsewhere. And as it's opening up the international flights, as each country is opening up, we expect huge attendance, and of course 18B and what's happening in on Main Street and the other hotels, the excitement. But are you allowed to talk at all about New Year's?
Well, I'll give some sneak peeks that right now I'm still talking to my board about doing something a little special for New Year's.
Okay.
So
you're not allowed to know what that is.
Yes, I'm trying to do something a little big for New Year's, so we'll hopefully have more the next time we talk, that you'll be like, wow, that was one heck of a New Year's Eve party, and I know you will be there to see it.
Yeah, every year Oscar and I, since Oscar became mayor in '99, we have done every New Year's Eve.
And we can't wait to have you, because
Well,
I think
we
this one will be
just love it.
special. We could pull off what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Because this year's been so complex, Mayor. If you want to book bands, it's just been hard because they don't know, with everything that's been going on, whether they would come or not, where you would be in the world. So trying to book bands 5 months in advance, nobody was really doing.
Except you can sell, it's outdoors.
That's right.
And therefore, I mean, everything that is an indoor arena has to be masked still. And so, well, that's wonderful.
But we also have the Santa Run coming up, right? And
Which is for Opportunity Village. Wonderful. And you do so much. For Susan Coleman, this is Breast Cancer Month. And so are you having a 5K, or are you doing something there?
Yeah, we're supporting Susan G. Coleman. We're supporting
Wonderful.
Opportunity Village. We're supporting the Scouts coming up next week. We try to give back to the community because everybody's been so good to us. We have been so fortunate at FSC, because it's funny, when Derek Stevens goes up on stage and I go up on stage to announce the bands, he always goes, how many of you are local out there? And you'll be surprised how many locals come to our free concerts as well. It's almost like a great resource and a night out for the community. On top of being great for tourism, so many locals are coming out and enjoying the
Well,
series.
and I know at the ownership of the downtown hotels, it's sort of the last vestige of private properties owned by individuals rather than big corporate structures. It's a very different type of feeling that was here in the 60s when we came to town, and highly competitive, and so always reaching out to do something extra. But I remember when Derek, as a matter of fact, brought the Knights down before they even had their first ice hockey game. So it's just, there's so much going on, and it's such an exciting place to be after we've been cooped up for so long. You can just feel the energy of especially the young people. The performers seem to be under control. You have good security. That was the other last piece, because we're running out of time. It's almost over. So security.
Yeah, so we've invested so much in security. We have our own private security force, 24/7, walking the street, but we also invested in a shot point system inside the canopy that has cameras all over the canopy and lets us know if anything's happening at all times.
And our Las Vegas Metro Police Department has been sensational, and of course our own marshals here in Las Vegas. And so we're out of time. Andrew, I got to do this again where you just
Already?
touched the surface. So thank you for watching another episode of Hello Mayor. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to our newsletter. Just take your phone, the camera on your phone, and put it over the QR code on the screen and follow the prompts to sign up for the newsletter. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.